All right. Welcome back to the Copywriters podcast with your host, the world's greatest copywriting coach, David Garfinkel, and a special surprise lined up for this week's episode. David, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good, Nathan. How are you?
I am fantastic-ish. So almost fantastic, just a little bit short of fantastic today.
What's going on?
Probably just didn't have enough green tea before we started recording.
Is that what you call it? Green tea? Awesome.
All right, enough of that.
Okay, so shall we get started?
Let's jump into it.
Okay, so our guest today is Donnie Bryant, a direct response copywriter and marketing consultant. And since 2007, 14 years, he's written sales copy in more than a dozen niches. Agora Financial, Dan Kennedy's GKIC, Early to Rise have all been his clients. And he's also shared the stage with such legends as Lamar Tyler, David Deutsch, who's been on our program, and the late Clayton Makepeace. I heard Donnie speak on an invitation-only copywriting webinar hosted by Agora Financial a couple years ago. He said some things about curiosity and neuroscience that, as they related to copy, that really caught my interest so much I knew I wanted to have him on the podcast someday. And today is that day, and we're lucky to have him. But first of all, there's no reason to think your luck has run out when you hear this. Copy is powerful. You're responsible for how you use what you hear on this podcast. And most of the time, common sense is all you need. But if you make extreme claims and or if you're writing copy for offers in highly regulated industries like health and finance and business opportunity, you may want to get a legal review after you write and before you start using your copy. Lawyers. My larger clients do this all the time, though. Donnie, welcome, and thanks for being here.
There's no lawyers here, right?
No, not today. Not as far
we
as
have an electric fence around my house that keeps them out.
Yeah, it can smell them, right? So we both admit that neither of us remember exactly what you talked about on the Agora call. But I believe
all the green tea.
The green tea. Oh, boy,
all that green tea.
We're going to do a special episode on Nathan's green tea. But I believe you're a big, you and I are both a big and ongoing student of neuroscience as it applies to copywriting. So
yes,
let's start with this question. What's the most surprising thing you've discovered about how neuroscience affects or interacts with how copywriting works?
Well, it kind of goes back to the thing that I talked with Agora about, and it's just the power of curiosity. And when you get it right, it can literally change everything for your copy. But what was most surprising to me is I found a study. I don't remember where it was done, but they were given people a test to see how strong curiosity was. And they found out that people would be willing to risk electric shock or get certain electric shock to get a piece of information that they were going to get anyway, but to get it a little earlier. So yeah, I'll take a shot. Or they would pay money to get to have magic tricks revealed to them early versus later. People in your brain, when you have what's called the curiosity gap, your brain just it needs closure on whatever the missing piece of information is. And so electric shock, they'd rather be shocked than deal with that gap, the existence of a vacuum in their knowledge. And so we can use that in copy to drive people from through copy from the top down to the bottom, or to click on a link to get to another page, or sometimes even to buy things. I got a text the other day from a friend of mine, and Andy Stanley, Andy, he was selling something, and it was like, this C word will change how you do email marketing. And my friend sent text, said, do you know what the C is? I have a guess, but I don't really know. He said, I'm really ready to pay $100 just to know what the C word is. I don't even really want the thing, but I just need to know what the C word is. And I think he ended up buying it. He never told me what the C word was, so I'm still
Maybe you got to split the 100 with it. But, as far as curiosity and electric shock, I'm wondering if that electric fence around your house is going to keep the lawyers out now.
That's why they keep
there's
running
some
into the
information
fence.
they can make money with. Maybe they'll risk it,
That's why they keep trying to climb it.
Oh, it's a tall fence. Okay. Well, let's get down to brass tacks. You've said that you told me salesmanship is in print. The phrase salesmanship in print is an outdated term, and especially considering that you live in the great city of Chicago, where the phrase was coined, that's a little surprising. So, why do you say it's outdated?
That's why they kicked me to the suburbs. Well, you know what? Are you curious about that?
I am. I got to know.
And Nathan said he was dying to know as well. Well, look, I think in our day and age, salesmanship is obviously what we're doing. But a lot of times when we think of salesmanship, we think of sleaze, we think of hype, we think of dishonesty. And a lot of people, especially with social media, they don't want to sell. They figure, this is wrong thinking, by the way, because you have to sell everything.
Right.
But they think I can just hide on Facebook. I can be a cool person and people will eventually buy from me. That's really false because you had to sell everything. There's actually, by my house, there's a cemetery and there's a sign that says salesman wanted on the cemetery. You had to sell burial plots. They don't sell themselves. People die. The bodies are piling up unless somebody will sell them a burial plot. So you had to sell. But salesmanship in print kind of turns people off, except for those of us who are kind of, we're the illuminated. We've been indoctrinated into this thing. But I'm preferring now to call it showmanship in print, which is probably also Chicago-like. Showmanship, a good salesman is a good showman.
Mm-hmm.
But in this day and age, we have to, more than anything, the first thing we have to do is grab people's attention. We have to stop them where they are in their tracks and get them to pay attention to us. And you don't do that by selling. You do that by giving them a good show. We have to compete with Netflix. We're not more interesting than Netflix, right? We're not. Our sales pitch is not. But if we can put on a good show with shocking facts or crazy stories or little curiosity things that drive you nuts, that will pull people in and get their attention long enough for you to, get to a formal sales pitch.
Okay. I like that. I think it's a really good point too. As much as I hate to admit this, Facebook has changed everything.
I feel the same way.
Even if you're not doing stuff on Facebook, it's still sort of lingering in the air. So yeah, great point. But let's talk about salesmanship, because at one time in your life you used to sell jewelry face to face.
Yes.
And I believe you learned a tactic that makes it painful for people not to buy. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, totally. This was years ago, and I was actually a schmuck at the time. I'm still probably a schmuck. But I knew somebody who got me a job selling jewelry back when it was Marshall Fields on State Street, the big store. Mm-hmm. And it was at Christmas time, so it was crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the things you sold face to face though too, right?
I did. I sold housewares.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. So you've done this before. So one of the old things that are descriptions that people would use of selling, or one of the things you had to do in selling, is transfer of ownership. You make the potential buyer feel as if they already own it, and then it's harder for them to give it back. Or if you put a tennis bracelet on a wife's wrist, she's get the credit card, we're buying this thing.
Right. It's
not, let me hand it back to you. It's much harder. And that, when it comes back to neuroscience, that's called the endowment effect. That's one manifestation of that. Once someone takes ownership of something, or they feel like they have something, they're much more, they're vehemently opposed to giving up what they have, far more than getting something that they want that they don't yet have. And
so you would like have them put on the tennis bracelet or the necklace, and then maybe, show them a mirror, or have them take a selfie or something like that.
Well, we did not. This is some years ago. Selfies weren't very popular back then.
Right.
But yeah, you take it, you let them look at it, like you said, in the mirror. Have their husband, oh yeah, you like this, don't you? You can't say no. You can't.
No,
there's no winning.
You got to buy it for it. Yeah.
And so he might be able to say, oh, we'll pick this up later, but he's not going to say outright no. And a lot of times they just pull out the credit card and make it easy for them. But you did the same. I believe. I have no reason to think you wouldn't do that with housewares. You take it out.
Oh yeah,
let them play with it.
I would sell Cuisinarts around Christmas time at it was at Bloomingdale's in the DC suburbs a long time ago. I was never analytical about it the way you were, so I don't know what I did, but I know it just felt like I was, it was a lasso and it kept going faster and faster. And I was just, I sold more than anybody else and I wasn't getting a commission. It was just like, winning,
So I had a friend that used to sell vacuums, and one of her biggest selling tactics was she would say, well, just keep the vacuum for the weekend. I'll be back on Monday. Yeah. And if you don't like the vacuum, we'll go ahead and take it back. And that huge increase in sales once she started doing that because of that same psychological effect. The way that I like to use this in my copy is I go out of my way to really paint the picture of what life is going to be like once they own this thing. So this is what your vacation is going to be like, or this is what your task management system is going to be like, or this is whatever it is that they're going to buy. I do my best to paint the picture of what it's going to be like so that they can't pick it up and feel it in their hands, but they can envision and they can see themselves owning the experience. And I was just wondering, as far as copy goes, is there other ways to kind of get that same effect?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you hit on the main one, and absolutely keep the vacuum over the weekend. That's like the ideal situation. You can do the same thing with a car. I don't know if anybody does that anymore, but years ago, my father-in-law, he was so angry because it made him buy a car he thought he wasn't going to buy. Just keep it over the weekend, fill the tank up of gas. And actually, I think Gary Halbert wrote something like that. I'll give you a full tank of gas and you can just drive it for the weekend. And if nothing else, bring it back. You got a free ride. And, that's how you sell things. But in copy, yeah, I think the main way is painting that very clear picture of what it will be like when you own that thing. Another way that I'm using, it works in email especially, is instead of giving discounts, you got 20% off. You can give somebody a credit. Like, here, you own this credit. This is owed to you. This is your property. Here's a $50 credit or a $500 credit. And now this is my credit versus a discount that you want to give me on something that I got to buy. And just a small difference in the psychology behind that, we tested it in the spring and then didn't again in the summertime. And it was like 15% better for whatever reason, just saying, here's your credit, here's how you use it, versus we're going to give you 20% off the thing that we want to sell you. So it's kind of the same thing. You own a discount, you own a discount, you own a credit. Because
the discount, you can not use it and you didn't really lose anything. But if it's the credit that you don't use, it's almost like not using money that's in your pocket.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the same thing as putting the tennis bracelet on. I'm putting money in your hand, but it's going to evaporate on Friday.
I always like to talk about fundamentals, and this goes back to something that sticks out in my mind. I don't remember what chapter it's in, but in Victor Schwab's book, How to Write a Good Ad, he quotes somebody as saying, a man will fight all week to keep a dollar he has, but he won't put that much time into getting a new one.
Yeah, exactly. We know that it's true.
Yeah, and it really works. So another question for you, and I hope you'll forgive me for bringing up Chicago again, but it is where some of our greatest comedians are from. And you said you have a technique copywriters can use to engage readers' minds more deeply, and this can be done by swiping a technique mastered by top comedians. So what's that all about?
So, okay, we can never talk about Chicago too much.
Oh, good. All right.
Clayton Makepeace, he used to beat me up about Chicago because he said we're one of the poop hole countries because in the media they paint us like we're very violent and things. It's not really as bad as it seems. But we could talk about Chicago as much as you like.
Okay.
So here's what I mean by swiping a technique from a comedian. What's the reason that we laugh at jokes? And well, what do you know what the answer is? But I'm curious to know what you think. How you would say? I'm putting you on the spot now.
No. Yeah, I think it's surprise. I think it's like, misdirection, and sometimes delight, and sometimes shock, and sometimes embarrassment, and just sometimes a hearty, celebration of common ground. But it's almost always surprise.
Yeah. I don't know if I tipped you off on that, but that's exactly the.
Oh no, I've studied comedy inside and out just to determine I don't want to become a comedian. But yeah,
I think you're a comedian in what you do, but
I agree.
It enriches our experience. But yeah, it's exactly right. Surprise is why we laugh, because whatever kind of setup it is. I mean, not always, because of course, like you said, sometimes you just say something raunchy and we laugh because for some reason, us guys, at least, my wife hates raunchy humor, but us guys, we can't help it.
Right?
He said poop.
Yeah, it's funny.
Whatever. But when the setup, it usually will show you kind of a familiar situation, but then there's a weird twist. It takes you in an unexpected place. The hippocampus, it predicts, like it scans what's happening and predicts what's going to come next. And if you can set somebody up where they kind of they feel like they know what's happening, or they kind of recognize what's happening, and then you give them surprise and delight, it activates and engages the hippocampus in a way that it kind of sucks the whole brain into what's happening. They now are locked into what's happening because something different is going on. It's almost like a survival mechanism. Something's different. What's going on, you have to analyze. And if you can do that, you pull people deeper into your copy or your video, whatever is going on. And it's just like a joke. The same part of your brain that works for a joke works when you can surprise people in copy.
That's really good. I was reading a book by a guy named Coker. He's a professor of music and an accomplished jazz musician, a saxophonist. I mean, he played with some top names, and it's actually the clearest description of music I've seen. He was talking about improvisation. He said, you've got to follow basic motif, basic theme, mm-hmm. but not exactly the way people would expect it. But if it's more than 50% of what they wouldn't expect, then it's not going to work. And I think it's the same principle. So the guy's improvising on a riff, and he goes up instead of down, or he goes to a flat 7 instead of major 7 or something. And it's a little unfamiliar, but it's not like music from outer space or something.
Right.
And so it's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah, and it kind of explodes in your mind. If you, like you said, you're familiar with the tune, and then something different happens. It's like, whoa, that was cool, and it makes you. It opens another kind of experience for you, and yeah, they're totally the same thing. I hadn't heard that the musical connection, but I think the way the brain works, so many things are linked. Just like, for example, with curiosity, the parts of your brain where curiosity works, and when you look at brain scans, is the same as what works with hunger. The part of your brain that works when you're thinking about food.
Wow, that's interesting.
A primal thing, right? We all need to eat. We're driven to eat, and we're driven to satisfy curiosity the same way we're driven to eat when we're hungry. So our brain is interesting that way.
Yeah, Gary Halbert said that curiosity was the number one thing. I think what he didn't say, maybe he assumed people would figure it out, or it was like curse of knowledge with him, but he definitely did, is he knew that curiosity by itself, I remember, the example he gave in the newsletter, a pig that flies, but it has to eventually be tied into something.
Yeah.
And it has to move towards benefit, desire, wanting, fear, greed,
Right.
some primal emotion. But curiosity is definitely the way to hook people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you're right. One thing that you mentioned, it made me think of curiosity has to have in the beginning of it, it has to be related to something you're somewhat familiar with. Because if you started talking about flying pigs, I've never seen it. I don't know how interested I am in that. Right. If you're talking about a secret tax code that can put $50,000 back in my, or take $50,000 off my tax bill. I know I like money. I know I hate the IRS. They're trying to get over the electric fence too.
You must have a really high one.
I'm thinking about adding concrete. Like, this is getting crazy. But so there's a level of,
I've heard that if you put little flat screens with porn playing on a loop, that they'll stop right there.
They'll never. That is a really great idea. My neighbors may not like it very much. They'll kick me out of the homeowners association.
I know that there's always that problem. Yeah,
it's not in the bylaws though, so they can't come to me and say, "Hey, we told you."
Listen, these homeowners associations, they'll make up a new bylaw about porn on flat screens playing on a loop within 30 feet of the house, exposed, outwards towards this. I mean, they do that.
I wonder if we lined up cars and put them inside the cars. It's not part of the structure.
That's a good idea. I like that.
David, you sound like you speak from experience on that one.
Well, I just have a good imagination.
Okay. This is where we're going to leave that part of the conversation.
Yeah, Nathan's very good at getting us back on track. Okay. So let's talk about neuroscience again. And This may relate to what you just said. I don't know. You said that there's a real neurological reason, the most important one, to critically nail your headline and your lead in every piece of copy.
Yeah. So this is kind of a principle or a reason behind why it matters so much to get the headline right and the lead right. And this is something, again, I'm maybe not telling anyone anything that you don't know, but just kind of highlighting how the kind of neurological or psychological.
Yeah, but if there's a better reason to do something you already need to know, you might do it more or remember it more.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I think this stuff is, like you said, we're both kind of students of this stuff, and it's fun to talk about it.
Yeah.
And for those who are beginning to get into copy, you can be interested in learning more about neuroscience. There's more and more information and studies coming out all the time. So, it'll give you a chance to get to know humans better.
Yeah.
Which is what we do. But the reason that headlines and leads are really critical is a principle called framing. So again, this is something that but research shows that the first piece of information that you get dictates how you perceive everything that follows. You're setting a frame. And obviously that's usually going to happen in your headline or in your lead, or in email, your subject line and maybe the pre-header text sets the tone. And this is so crazy. I'll just give an example that it fascinates me to no end in my own testing. We're testing with hundreds of thousands of emails, but we've tested where probably everyone would see this if they looked. A/B testing a subject line where the body of the email is identical, the landing page or sales page is identical, and they're clicking through an order form that's identical. The only difference being the subject line. We have seen open rates, of course, go up or down. Click-through rate on the email goes up or down. Conversion, from the sales page to the order form, clicks go up and down. And then ultimate conversion to the sale goes up or down. The only difference being a better or worse subject line, because it sets the frame. Someone's in you bringing in the right people in the right state of mind to buy or not. So it seems like you would lose it. And I think most people think this. The open rate is the main thing that will be affected by your subject line. In fact, the conversion all the way at the bottom is affected by the subject line.
Are we talking about differences that whisper or differences that shout?
No, I'm talking about their studies. They differ, but I've seen them as high as 25, maybe like 24% on conversion.
Wow. Wow.
Conversion to sale, like as in they actually gave money. And the only thing that was different between two emails was the subject line. Pre-header text the same, body of the email the same, landing page is the same.
It's interesting about that. It occurs to me the same thing's probably true in every single conversation you have in your life.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine if you say to someone, well, I don't want to bore you, but you set the frame of boring. Or if you say, no, listen, I don't want you to get too excited, but you set the frame for excitement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just, wow, what a great point. Framing, yeah. I've always suspected that, but I've never seen tests of not the conversation thing, but the email thing that you were saying, that the subject line in an email is going to set the tone. I mean, that's sort of more of a artistic or musical or theatrical thing, but it's the same thing as what you're saying, framing,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy. I was shocked. This was maybe last year when I noticed it. I was doing analysis for a campaign I was working on. Let's see what we did last time. And it would be so strange. Like, how come? I never thought about it, but how come it affects so deeply? Because you make the assumption that after you get to the body of the email, which is identical, probably people are more or less the same. Totally false. And especially once they click through, because obviously sometimes if your email says sex, right, and everybody opens, but the body of the email is, to get your liver healthy, drink some of this. And it's like, okay, nobody clicks. But then if the subject line is how to have a healthier liver, the right people click, or the right people open, and then they click. So you'll have a different click-through rate. But anybody who makes it to the sales page, you'd think is more or less equal. They're on the same page, but they're not. The subject line impacts every metric going forward. And I think you're right. If you step up to, enter in a conversation, the first line, or maybe even before you first speak, the way that you walk up to somebody, if you walk up like a creep, then they're like, I don't know about this guy.
Right.
He's probably watching porn on the flat screens out front.
On loop. Yeah. So you've said that AIDA, the old attention, interest, desire, action, should be replaced by CDA. What do you? I can almost guess what you mean by that, but I'll.
Yeah, your guess would be correct. I bet. What would you guess it is?
Curiosity, desire, action. Yeah,
absolutely. And curiosity, of course, gets attention, as we mentioned, and it gets you interested, or at least it gets you ready to be interested in something. I'm already engaged. I want to know what's happening, and you have a chance like no other, to pull somebody into whatever narrative you want to tell.
Right, and I like that because until you have a lot of experience, you kind of have to make some pretty awkward guesses as to what to do with attention and interest. But curiosity is natural. I mean, it's just what drives us through the day. It's how you get pets and little children.
Yes.
Every time you watch a newscast, they're using curiosity, especially the tease right before the commercial break. So we're a lot more familiar with that. I really like that. Yeah. Well, I think we're coming close to our time. Is there anything else you'd like to share, and how do people get in touch with you? You're probably booked 6 months in advance, but if somebody wanted to get some of your time, what would they do?
Well, turn off the porn screen at the gate. I'm now there.
Really, you have the IRS as a client? That's awesome.
Well, they get paid by me, so they might. I should be writing copy for them as much money they take from me.
You are. It's called a check.
Oh man. Let me say one other thing, just about curiosity. Like I mentioned, you had to have a level of awareness. I keep doing this. It's so weird. Your reader has to have some level of awareness of what you're talking about. You can't just say, I have a friend. He's never paid me money, so he's not a client. And actually, I haven't paid attention to him, so he's not really a friend.
Oh,
but
somebody
some dude.
Yeah.
Who I like very much, but it's been a while since we talked, because he always wants to do the poetic thing, and he'll say, "Why coconuts?" And you're already lost. It's poetic, it's beautiful, but there's no interest there. I don't know what coconuts have to do with money. So you have to have a level of awareness of what the thing is, but then there also has to be, if they know too much, then there's no reason for them to be curious. So go ahead. You were going to ask.
I think that's a writer-centric problem, because just by our very nature, most writers are interested in conceptual ironies and paradoxes.
Yeah.
Like why coconuts actually float upwards instead of fall from the trees south of the equator, or something totally absurd like that. And wow, why is that? I know water swirls down the drain, but most people are not like that. And even the kind of people who are like that, when they're reading your copy, they're scrolling through a million emails, they're hate scrolling through Twitter, whatever. And so they're not in that expansive, reflective mood. And people don't usually buy stuff in an expansive, reflective mood.
Right.
So, yeah, I love that point. That, I understand, Poetic Friend. I like to do that when I'm not writing copy. I get a kick out, but I know that that's not going to work. It's not going to make anyone any money or help anybody who needs the product.
Right. It's exactly right. So, I mean, I just wanted to point that out, because if sometimes our writer friends will say, oh, it is curious because you don't know anything about it, but you had to know a little bit about it. It has to be about something that's relevant to you. But if they know too much, I just critiqued some copy yesterday where a guy was saying, how come this guy can't build muscle? It's because he doesn't have protein. Like, oh, great. They know that already. They know that. Tell me something that I don't know. So, there has to be a level of awareness, but it's limited, where they don't know, or they know that they don't know something about it, or at least you can introduce, there's something you don't know about this thing that you know about, but don't talk about something they don't know about. Or if you do, talk about in terms of something that they do know about.
Yeah, so you have to learn to bracket it between what they already know and something that's going to be too much of a mental reach for them. It's got to be in the middle.
Right, got to be in there. I just wanted to make that point. So
nobody says, point.
Donnie said I needed to be curiosity focused. Yes, but there's bounds. Like you said, there's some brackets that you got to fit into. If somebody wanted to get in touch with me after this crazy conversation, I am on Facebook. I very rarely do anything there. The best thing for me is my website, which is Donnie-Bryant.com. And I haven't really updated it in a while, but if you sign up for my newsletter, then you'll hear from me about once a week. If I were smart, I would do it more often, but
you're too busy helping people make money to write more often than that, right?
Let's call it that.
Okay. Good line, whether it's true or not. Yeah.
So
I do spend a lot of time writing, but I also try to spend time fighting off IRS people and playing with lawyers. And lawyers. And
building the electric fence.
And sometimes you got to clean up the fried carcasses off the ground.
So we started off the conversation talking about a C word for your emails. I think we made a lot of callbacks in this episode. We talked about comedy and we talked about curiosity. So there's a few candidates for what that C word might be. I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Donnie, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with our listeners.
It's been a blast. I've been actually waiting for David to call me. Like, what's 193, huh? That's where we're at with.
that is correct. How do you know that?
Well, Nathan said at the beginning of this episode, 193. Or he may have said it before we recorded.
Snooping on my computer. Yeah. Well, I didn't want anyone to feel impinged upon by reaching out to you right after I saw you in Agora call. That was the main reason. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I'm really good at procrastination. So.
I saw a T-shirt someone was wearing. It said "Eventual Procrastinator." Like, they don't even procrastinate on time.
Yeah,
I'll procrastinate later.
That's the advanced version, right?
Yeah. All right, guys. This was a fantastic episode. And just one more time before we're out of here, Donnie, what's your website if people want to go check you out?
Yeah, Donnie, which is IEDONNIE -Bryant.com.
And you're an ongoing researcher on neuroscience. Do you ever put anything about that in there?
Every once in a while. Most of my readers are not even copywriters. They're entrepreneurs who are trying to, figure out how to sell better. and they don't want to hire me, I should send them hate mail, I guess. But
just send them an invoice.
So I do sometimes talk about neuroscience, or it's very light, but mostly it's just, I try to be useful, helping people think about ways that they can increase their conversions or finally get out their butt and write something.
Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you. And really valuable too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And for the listeners out there, if you want more episodes, not quite just like this one, but kind of just like this one, you can get that over at Copywriters.
Each one is unique, right? Each one is unique.
And very valuable.
Yeah, you can get more of that at copywriterspodcast.com. And until next time, guys, we will catch you later.
Catch you later.